The conference room door clicked shut behind me, and I knew I was screwed. I stood there in the hallway with my ID badge in my hand, swiping it against the reader like an idiot. Red light. Swipe again. Red light. The little panel on the wall blinked at me with that cold, unblinking stare, and through the glass wall of the meeting room, I could see my PowerPoint up on the screen. My PowerPoint. The one I had spent 2 full weeks building, night after night, after everyone else had gone home, and the cleaning crew had vacuumed around my desk. And there was Lin Weiwei, standing at the front of the room like she owned it, clicking through my slides like they were hers. That I watched her point at the dynamic data model I had coded from scratch, the one that took me 3 sleepless nights to get right because the nested functions kept breaking every time I tried to run the simulation. She was saying something to the room, her lips moving in that careful, practiced way she had, and people were nodding. Director Zhang was nodding. My intern Xiao Zhao was nodding. Even Carol from accounting, who never nodded at anything, was squinting at the screen like she was actually impressed. I slapped my palm against the glass door. No one looked up. I tried my badge again. Red light. I could feel the panic starting to crawl up my throat, hot and sour, the same way it used to feel in high school when I forgot my locker combination and the bell was about to ring. Except this wasn't high school. This was the quarterly presentation for the biggest client we had all year, and I was standing outside like a delivery driver who had shown up at the wrong address. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out and saw a text from Weiwei sent 5 minutes ago. Hey, I saw you left your Yupon on your desk, so I grabbed it for you. Don't worry, I'll cover for you. Rest up if you're not feeling well, XX. I stared at the message for 3 full seconds before the rage hit me. She had taken my backup drive. She had told the front desk I was sick. She had somehow gotten my badge deactivated, probably through that admin assistant she was always buying bubble tea for, and now she was standing in front of 30 people pretending my work was hers. Through the glass, I saw her gesture at the screen. She had changed something. The color scheme, maybe. The fonts looked different. She had swapped out my clean, minimalist template for something flashier, with gradients and shadows and all the things I had deliberately avoided because this was supposed to be a data presentation, not a fashion show. This model had some flaws, I heard her say, her voice muffled through the glass but still clear enough. So, I took the liberty of revising it overnight. My hands started shaking. I pressed them flat against the glass door, my breath fogging the surface. Someone inside glanced over. It was Xiao Zhao, my intern, the kid I had been mentoring for 6 months. Our eyes met through the glass. He looked confused, then worried. Then he turned back to the screen like he hadn't seen me at all. I wanted to scream. I wanted to bang on that door until it shattered. But I am a professional, and professionals do not have meltdowns in the hallway of their own office building, so I shoved my hands into my pockets, walked back to my desk, and sat down. My computer was still on. The screensaver was that generic blue gradient the IT department forced on everyone. I moved my mouse and my desktop came back up, and there it was. The folder labeled Q3 Presentation, Final, Do Not Touch. I opened it. Empty. She had taken everything. Not just the U-Bahn. She had logged into my computer while I was in the bathroom, copied the entire folder, and deleted the originals. I checked the recycle bin. Empty. I checked the cloud backup. Last synced 3 days ago, missing all the final revisions I had made over the weekend. I leaned back in my chair and stared at the ceiling. The fluorescent lights hummed. The AC kicked on, blowing cold air directly onto my neck. I had been so careful. I had password protected my computer, locked my screen every time I walked away, kept my Yupon in my bag at all times. But I had left it on my desk this morning because I was running late and I was carrying 3 cups of coffee and I thought just this once it would be fine. It wasn't fine. I pulled out my phone again. Opened TikTok. I had posted a video last night, just a silly thing I made while procrastinating, showing how I used Excel's conditional formatting to draw a Pikachu. It was stupid. It was the kind of thing you make at 2 in the morning when you can't sleep and you've had too much coffee and you think, this will make my followers laugh. It had 100,000 views. I blinked. I refreshed. 112,000. I refreshed again. 130,000. People were commenting. This is insane. Teach me your ways. I'm a data analyst, and I can't even make a bar chart look good, "How did you do this?" Someone had tagged a local finance influencer. Someone else had cross-posted it to a data science subreddit. The engagement numbers were climbing faster than I could track. I scrolled through the comments, my brain slowly clicking into gear. And then I saw the data model in my head, the one Weiwei was currently presenting as her own. The one she couldn't possibly understand because she didn't know the underlying logic. She had changed the fonts and the colors, but the core algorithm, the nested functions, the dynamic referencing that made the whole thing work, that was all mine. And it was still tied to my cloud server. I opened my cloud dashboard. There it was. The live data feed, still pinging my server every 15 seconds. Weiwei was presenting from a local copy she had saved onto her laptop, but any time the model tried to refresh, it would call back to my server for the base calculations. She had no idea that I could kill the feed. I could shut it down right now, watch her screen go blank, watch her scramble to figure out what was wrong. The satisfaction of that image almost made me do it, but I did not. Instead, I opened my video editing app. I pulled up the screen recording I had made 3 days ago, the one where I walked through the data model step by step, explaining each function and why I chose it. I had made it for my own reference, a kind of video diary to help me remember my thought process. I hadn't planned to post it anywhere. I trimmed the first few seconds, added a voiceover I recorded right there at my desk, trying to keep my voice steady even though my hands were still shaking. I kept it simple. I said, "Someone told me today that my data model had flaws. So, I thought I'd share how it actually works. Here's the logic behind every single cell." Then I added a caption at the end. "For anyone who's ever had their work stolen, the algorithm lives in your head, not on a flash drive." I hit post, then I put my phone face down on my desk, opened a blank Excel sheet, and started building something new. I didn't know what yet, but my fingers were moving, typing formulas, dragging cells, building structures. It was the only thing that made sense when everything else felt like it was falling apart. The numbers were clean. The logic was pure. There was no way in a spreadsheet, and an hour later, the meeting ended. I heard the conference room door open, heard the murmur of voices and the shuffle of feet. Director Zhang walked past my desk, glanced at me, and stopped. "Su Qing," he looked surprised. "Weiwei said you weren't feeling well. She took over your presentation." I looked up from my screen. She did. She did a great job, by the way. He nodded, approving. The revisions she made really polished it up. That dynamic model you built, the one with the nested functions, she streamlined it. Very impressive. I smiled. Glad it worked out. He walked away. I watched him go. And then I watched Weiwei come out of the conference room, surrounded by a little cluster of people, laughing at something someone said. She caught my eye, and her smile flickered for just a second before she smoothed it back into place. She came over to my desk, her heels clicking against the floor. "Su Qing," she said, loud enough for the people around us to hear. "I'm so sorry. I hope you're feeling better. I didn't want you to stress about the presentation, so I just jumped in. Hope that was okay." I looked at her. At her perfect blazer, her perfect lipstick, her perfect expression of concern. I remembered the day she started at this company, 6 months ago. I had been the one to show her around, introduce her to everyone, help her set up her workstation. I had thought she was nice. I had thought we could be friends. "Thanks," I said. "That was really thoughtful of you." She blinked. She had expected me to fight, I could tell. She had expected tears, maybe, or accusations, or some dramatic scene she could spin into a story about how unstable I was. But I just sat there, smiling, and she didn't know what to do with it. "Anyway," she said, recovering quickly, "I made some edits to the model. Just some small tweaks. I hope you don't mind." "Of course not." I tilted my head. "Actually, I'm curious. Which part did you tweak?" She opened her mouth, then closed it. I watched her face cycle through a few different expressions before she landed on a vague smile. "Oh, a little bit of everything. I just cleaned it up." "Great." I turned back to my screen. "If you ever want to walk me through your changes, I'd love to see them." She lingered for a moment, waiting for me to crack. I didn't. Eventually she walked away, and I felt the tension in my shoulders release just a fraction. I picked up my phone. The new video already had 50,000 views. Comments were flooding in, people tagging their coworkers, people sharing their own stories, people saying they'd never thought about data models this way before. The engagement was exploding. And then I saw it. A blue checkmark. A local influencer account I had been following for years, someone who ran a popular finance and tech blog. They had commented, "This is the kind of algorithmic thinking that separates good analysts from great ones. If this person isn't leading a team somewhere, someone's making a mistake." I stared at the screen for a long time that I checked my server logs. Weiwei's version of the presentation was still pinging my cloud, still pulling data. She didn't know. She had no idea that every time she opened that file, it sent a request to my server, logging her activity. I could see exactly when she opened it, how long she spent on each slide, which parts she accessed most often. She had stolen my work, but she was still using my tools to do it. I opened my cloud dashboard and looked at the data feed. I could shut it off anytime. I could lock her out of the model completely, watch her scramble when the numbers stopped updating. But that felt too easy. That felt like the kind of revenge that made you feel good for 5 minutes and then hollow for the rest of the day. I closed the dashboard and my phone buzzed again. A notification from TikTok. The blue checkmark influencer had followed me. And then, a direct message from an account I didn't recognize. A blue checkmark too, but this one was from a media company I had never heard of. I opened it and read the message. "We saw your data visualization video. The Pikachu one. And the model breakdown you posted today. We're curious about your approach. Would you be open to a conversation?" I clicked on the account. MCNTGO. I didn't know what that meant. I scrolled through their posts, trying to figure out who they were, what they wanted. And then I saw the username on the profile. I didn't know that name either. But I saw his bio. Data. Algorithms. Storytelling. Everything else is noise. I put my phone down and looked at my reflection in the dark monitor. My hair was messy. My lipstick had worn off. There was a tiny coffee stain on my collar that I hadn't noticed all morning. I looked like someone who had been locked out of a conference room and had nowhere to go. But I also looked like someone who had just posted a video that was about to hit 500,000 views. I looked like someone whose data model had just been praised by a finance influencer with 100,000 followers. I looked like someone who was not done yet. I picked my phone back up and typed a reply to Zhou. "I'm interested. But let me finish something first." Then I opened Excel and started building again. This time, I was building for me. The next morning, I walked into the office and everything felt different and not the office itself. The office was the same gray cubicles, the same humming printers, the same faint smell of burnt coffee that never quite went away. But the energy had shifted. People looked at me differently. The receptionist gave me a little wave that was a little too enthusiastic. Mark from IT actually held the elevator door for me, which he had never done before in 2 years of us sharing the same floor. And then I saw my screen. My phone had exploded overnight. The video was at 800,000 views. 800,000. I had to refresh the page 3 times just to make sure I wasn't hallucinating. The comments were a wall of support, people sharing their own stories of having work stolen, people tagging friends, people asking for tutorials. My follower count had jumped from a few hundred to over 20,000. I sat down at my desk and tried to act normal. It was hard. My heart was pounding and my hands were shaking, and I kept glancing over my shoulder like someone was about to tap me on the shoulder and say, "Just kidding, none of this is real." But it was real. The numbers on my screen were real. The DMs I had gotten from 3 different recruiters were real. The email from a podcast host asking me to come on their show was real. And then there was the message from Zhou. He had replied to my response. Just a short message. "Take your time. But I'm serious about that conversation. Let me know when you're ready." I stared at his profile picture. It was a clean shot of a man in a suit, but not a stuffy suit. A relaxed suit. The kind of suit that said, "I know what I'm doing, but I don't need to prove it to you." His bio said he was the founder of a data analytics firm. I Googled him. The results were impressive. He had been written up in industry publications, spoken at conferences, built a reputation for being the guy who could find patterns in anything. I closed the browser. I had work to do. The morning meeting was at 10. Director Zhang called everyone into the conference room, the same room I had been locked out of yesterday. I walked in and took my usual seat near the back. Wei Wei was already there, sitting at the front, her laptop open, a smug little smile playing at the corners of her mouth. Zhang started the meeting by reviewing the Q3 projections. Then he turned to Wei Wei. "Great job on yesterday's presentation," he said. The client was impressed. They especially liked the dynamic model you put together. Wei Wei preened. "Thank you. I worked really hard on those revisions." I said nothing. "I just watched." "Actually," Zhang continued, "I was thinking we could have you lead the Q3 project team. Your work yesterday really demonstrated the kind of leadership we need." Wei Wei's smile widened. She glanced at me, quick and sharp, a little dart of triumph. I could practically hear her thinking it. I had won. She had won. The woman who got locked out and the woman who took her place, and guess which one was getting promoted? I reached into my bag and pulled out my phone. I opened my cloud dashboard and watched the real-time ping from Wei Wei's laptop. She was still connected to my server. She was still using my model. She had no idea. "Actually," I said, and everyone turned to look at me. "Before we finalize the project team, I'd like to share something." Zhang raised his eyebrows. "Go ahead." I stood up and walked to the front of the room. Wei Wei's smile flickered. She shifted in her seat, her fingers tightening on her laptop. I pulled up the screen share. "This is the model Wei Wei presented yesterday," I said. "It's a good model. I know because I built it." A murmur went through the room. Wei Wei's face went pale. "Su Qing, what are you?" I held up a hand. "Let me show you something." I opened the cloud dashboard. This is the server that the model pulls from. Every time Wei Wei opens her version of the file, it sends a request to my server. I can see exactly what she's doing, what slide she's looking at, how long she spends on each one, which data point she refreshes. I pulled up the log. The whole room could see it. A list of timestamps and actions, all tied to a device ID that matched Wei Wei's laptop. "I didn't get into the conference room yesterday," I continued. "My badge didn't work. Wei Wei told everyone I was sick. She took my Yupon from my desk and presented my work as her own. She changed the fonts and the colors, but she didn't change the model. She can't. She doesn't understand the underlying logic because she didn't build it." Wei Wei was shaking her head. "This is crazy. She's making this up. I revised that model myself." "Okay," I said. "Then explain it to me." She stared at me. "Explain what?" "The nested functions," I said. "The dynamic referencing. The reason the model uses a VLOOKUP instead of ins lookup. Explain the logic behind those choices." Silence. "I can," Wei Wei said, but her voice had gone thin. I don't have to prove anything to you. You don't have to prove anything to me." I agreed. "But you just told everyone you revised the model. So show them." Zhang was looking back and forth between us, his expression unreadable. The rest of the team was frozen in their seats, not sure which way to look. Wei Wei opened her mouth, then closed it. Her face was blotchy now, the careful makeup starting to break apart around her eyes. "This is ridiculous," she said finally. "I'm not going to sit here and be interrogated by someone who's jealous because I did good work." "Then explain the nested functions," I said. "One sentence. That's all I'm asking." She couldn't. I watched her try, watched the panic bloom in her eyes as she realized she had nothing. She had taken the file, changed the cosmetics, and presented it, but she had never looked at the guts of it. She had never cared about the guts of it. "Okay," Zhang said slowly. "Wei Wei, come to my office after this." Wei Wei gathered her things and fled. She didn't look at anyone. She just picked up her laptop and walked out of the room with her head down, her heels clicking too fast on the floor. The rest of the meeting was a blur. Zhang asked me to present the model properly, and I did. I walked through every step, every function, every choice I had made and why. I answered questions. I addressed concerns. I did all the things I would have done yesterday if I had been allowed in the room. When it was over, Zhang pulled me aside. "I'm sorry," he said. "I should have realized something was off. Wei Wei's version was flashier, but it didn't have the depth of yours. I should have asked more questions." "You trusted a team member," I said. "That's not a crime." He nodded. but he looked uncomfortable. The Q3 project lead position? I'll do it, I said. But I want a clear chain of documentation from now on. Version control. Timestamps. No more running things off Yupon. Done. I walked back to my desk feeling lighter than I had in days. The weight that had been pressing on my chest since yesterday morning had finally eased. I had said the thing. I had proved the thing. I had done it without screaming or crying or losing my composure. I opened my phone. The TikTok video had crossed 1 million views. 1 million. I couldn't wrap my head around it. 1 million people had watched me explain a data model. 1 million people had cared. And then I saw the notification. Joe, you had followed me. Not just messaged me. Followed me. His blue checkmark sat next to his name in my notifications, and I felt something flutter in my chest that I immediately tried to squash. I opened his profile again. Scrolled through his posts. He shared a lot of data visualizations, clean and elegant, the kind of work that made you stop scrolling and just look. He had a way of presenting numbers that felt almost like art. I could see why people followed him. I could see why his firm had the reputation it did. I was still scrolling when my phone buzzed. A DM. From him. Congrats on the video. You're at 1 million already. That's not nothing. I stared at the screen. How did he know that I hadn't told anyone? I hadn't even fully processed it myself. Just checked, he added, like he could read my thoughts. I'm a data guy. I like numbers. I typed back. You're stalking my analytics? No. I'm admiring your work. There's a difference. I laughed out loud. I couldn't help it. A few people at nearby desks looked up, and I pretended to cough into my hand. Okay, I typed. So, what's this conversation you want to have? I'm building something new. A tool for women in the workplace. Data-based. I want to talk to people who understand the problem from the inside. I paused. That was a good answer. It wasn't about my video or my views or my sudden internet fame. It was about what I knew, what I had lived. That's interesting, I typed. When were you thinking? Now coffee your building's cafe. I looked at the clock. It was almost noon. I had a lunch break coming up. I could do coffee. I could meet this guy and hear what he had to say. But I hesitated. Yesterday was still fresh. The feeling of being betrayed by someone I had trusted was still raw. I had just exposed Weiwei in front of the whole team. I had just won. And now I was supposed to walk into a cafe and have a casual conversation with a stranger. Tomorrow, I typed. 3. My building's cafe. Deal, he replied. I'll be the guy with the spreadsheets. I put my phone down and tried to focus on work. I had Q3 planning to do. I had to build a team, set goals, figure out how to turn that incredible presentation into actual results. I had 1 million things to do. But I kept glancing at my phone, kept thinking about Zhou Yu's message, kept wondering what kind of person built a data tool for women, and then reached out to someone they'd never met to get their perspective. That I had just spent the morning fighting for my own recognition. And now someone was telling me they saw value in my experience. That it felt strange. It felt good. That afternoon, I ran into Weiwei in the bathroom. She was leaning against a sink, her eyes red-rimmed, her carefully curated composure completely gone. She didn't look at me when I walked in. She just stood there, staring at her reflection. Enjoying yourself, she said, her voice flat. I washed my hands. I'm not enjoying anything. I just wanted my work back. Your work. She laughed, but it was bitter. You think that's what this is about, your precious little data model? What is it about then? She finally turned to look at me. Her mascara was smudged. She had been crying, maybe for a while. You have no idea what it's like, she said. To come into a place where everyone already knows each other, where there's already a hierarchy, where you have to fight for every scrap of attention. You have no idea. I came into this place the same way you did, I said. I started here just like everyone else. Sure. But you're good. You're really good. You don't have to fight for attention because your work speaks for itself. I have to scrap and claw and take whatever I can get. I dried my hands. That's not how it works. You don't get to steal someone else's work and call it scrappy. Weiwei looked at me, and for a second, I saw something broken in her eyes. Do you know what Zhang said to me in his office just now? He said I'm being moved to logistics. Logistics? Su Qing. He's taking me off the project team entirely.
I didn't know what to say to that.
Part of me felt vindicated. But another part, the part that remembered what it was like to be new and scared and desperate for validation, felt a twinge of something softer. I didn't ask for that. I said, "Doesn't matter," she said. "You got it anyway."
She walked out.
I stayed in the bathroom, staring at my own reflection in the mirror. I looked tired. I looked like someone who had been fighting for too long. But I also looked like someone who had won. I went back to my desk and opened my phone. The video was at 1.2 million views. The comments were still flooding in. And there, at the top of my notifications, was another DM from Zhou. "Just so you know," it read, "I'm not offering you a job. I'm offering you a partnership. If that changes anything." I read the message 3 times, then I typed back, "It changes everything." I put the phone down and opened my Excel sheet. Tomorrow, I was going to meet Zhou and talk about building something new. Something for women who had been locked out of rooms. Something for people like me. And I was going to build it from scratch. With my own hands. With my own brain. No one was going to take that away from me again. The next day I showed up to the cafe 15 minutes early, which was stupid because now I had to sit there and pretend I wasn't waiting for someone. I ordered a hot Americano and took a table by the window, the one where I could see the door, and also pretend to be deeply absorbed in my phone. He walked in at exactly 3. I knew it was him before he even looked around. The way he moved was unhurried, like he had all the time in the world and knew exactly where he was going. He was wearing a dark sweater and those glasses I had seen in his profile picture, and when his eyes scanned the room and landed on me, he smiled like we had known each other for years. "Su Qing," he said, sliding into the chair across from me.
I'm Zhou.
"Thanks for meeting me." "Thanks for reaching out," I said. "Your message was unexpected. Good unexpected or bad unexpected. I haven't decided yet."
He laughed.
It was a warm sound, not forced or practiced. He flagged down a server and ordered a flat white, then turned his attention back to me. "I saw your Pikachu video first," he said. "The Excel one. I thought it was clever. But then I saw the model breakdown you posted yesterday, and that's when I knew I had to talk to you." "Why?" "Because you explained a complex piece of work in a way that anyone could understand. That's rare. That's genuinely rare." He leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table. "I've been in this industry for a decade. I've seen brilliant analysts who couldn't explain their own work to save their lives. And I've seen average analysts who could sell ice to Eskimos. But you're both. That's a combination I don't see very often." I took a sip of my Americano to hide the fact that I didn't know what to say. "You're pretty direct." "I don't have time to be indirect," he said. "I'm building something, and I need people who can do what you do." He pulled out his laptop and opened it. I watched him navigate to a presentation, something clean and minimal, the kind of design that made you want to read every word. "I'm calling it her algorithm," he said. "It's a data analytics tool designed specifically for women in the workplace. The idea is to help them track their own contributions, document their wins, and build a case for promotions and raises based on hard data, not politics." I blinked. "That's specific." "I know." He turned the laptop toward me. "Here's the prototype. It's rough, but the bones are there. I want to build a version that actually works for real people. And I want her input." I scrolled through the slides. The structure was solid. The logic was sound. But I could see gaps, places where the assumptions didn't match reality. "Can I be honest?" I said. "Please. This is great from a technical standpoint. But it doesn't account for the human factor. Women don't just need to track their contributions. They need to know how to present them, how to advocate for themselves, how to navigate systems that are set up to ignore them." Zhou nodded slowly. "Okay. Tell me more." So I did. I told him about the office politics, the casual dismissals, the way your ideas suddenly become someone else's when you're not in the room. I told him about Weiwei and the conference room, and the feeling of standing outside while your own work was being praised by someone else. That he listened without interrupting. When I finished, he was quiet for a moment. "This is exactly what I needed to hear," he said. "I built the tool from a data perspective. But I was missing the story, the lived experience. That's why I reached out to you. I knew I was missing something." The server brought his flat white. He took a sip and studied me over the rim of the cup. Here's what I'm proposing, he said. I have the resources. I have the technical team. But I need someone who can ground this in reality, someone who's lived it. I want you to come on as a partner. Not an employee. A partner. I felt my pulse quicken. What would that look like? We'd build this together. You'd shape the features, validate the use cases, help me understand what real women actually need. And when we launch, you'd be the face of it. The voice. That's a big ask. It is. But I think you're up for it. I looked at his laptop screen, at the clean lines and elegant design of his prototype. I thought about my video, the one with 1 million views, the one where I had explained something complex in a way that made people feel empowered. I thought about the comments, the women who had reached out to say thank you, the ones who had shared their own stories. That I wanted more of that. I wanted to build something that mattered. Give me 3 days, I said. I want to think about it. Zhou smiled. I'll give you 3 days. But I'll be here, ready to go when you are. I closed his laptop and slid it back across the table. One more question. Shoot. Why me? I know you said the video and the model breakdown, but there are other people out there. Data analysts. Content creators. Why reach out to someone you've never met? He was quiet for a second. Then he said, because when I watched your video, I didn't just see a data model. I saw someone who had been through something and come out the other side. That's the kind of person I want to work with. Someone who understands what it costs to keep going. I didn't have a response to that. So I just nodded and stood up. I'll be in touch, I said, count on it. I walked out of the cafe with my head spinning. The air outside was cool and sharp, the kind of afternoon that made you want to walk for miles just to clear your head. I turned down the street and started walking, not really sure where I was going, but my phone buzzed. A text from Xiao Zhao, my intern. Su Qing, are you okay? Wei Wei just came back to her desk crying. Everyone's talking. I stopped walking. Crying. Yeah. She said you humiliated her in the meeting. I told her that wasn't true, but she wouldn't listen. She's packing up her stuff now. I stood on the sidewalk, the phone pressed to my ear, trying to process what I was hearing. I had exposed her. That was true. I had shown everyone that she had stolen my work. That was also true. But I hadn't intended to humiliate her. I had just wanted to reclaim what was mine. Let me call you back, I said. I ended the call and stood there for a long moment. The sun was warm on my face. The street was busy with people going about their day, none of them aware that I was standing on the edge of a decision that felt enormous. I could walk back to the office and try to smooth things over. I could tell myself I had done the right thing and move on. But a part of me, a stubborn part, wanted to see this through. Wanted to meet Zhou again and build something new and let Wei Wei figure out her own path. Did I open my phone and typed out a message to Xiao Zhao. Let her go. She needs to figure things out on her own. Then I typed another message, this one to Zhou. 3 days. But I have a question. He replied immediately. Ask. On the project team, who gets credit for the work? Clear chain of documentation. Right, always. I've been burned before too. I smiled at the screen. Okay. I'll see you in 3 days. I walked back to the office with a lighter step. The building looked different today, less imposing, more like a place I could navigate on my own terms. I took the stairs instead of the elevator, climbing each flight with a sense of purpose I hadn't felt in weeks. When I got to my desk, Wei Wei's was empty. Her computer was gone. Her plants were gone. The little framed photo of her and her friends was gone. She had packed up and left while I was at the cafe. I sat down and stared at the empty desk for a long time. Part of me felt relieved. Part of me felt guilty. But mostly I felt tired. Tired of the politics, the games, the constant need to prove myself. I opened my cloud dashboard and looked at the logs one more time. Wei Wei's last access had been at 10 that morning, right after she left Director Zhang's office. She had opened the file one final time, probably to save a copy of her own, and then she had stopped connecting. I closed the dashboard and opened a new document. I started typing notes. Ideas for her algorithm tool. Features I wanted to see. Use cases I could imagine. Women who needed to track their own progress and advocate for themselves. I worked for hours. The sun set outside my window. The office slowly emptied. And still I typed, filling page after page with possibilities. At 7 my phone buzzed. Zhou, Just checking in, he said. You still good, still good. I typed back. Working on notes for your prototype. Can I see them? 3 days, remember, right? 3 days. I'm holding you to that. I smiled at the screen and put the phone down. I worked for another hour, refining my notes, making sure everything was clear and actionable. When I finally closed my laptop and packed up to leave, the office was dark and quiet. I walked to the elevator and pressed the button. The doors opened, and I stepped inside. As the door slid shut, I caught my reflection in the polished metal. I looked tired. I looked like I had been fighting. But I also looked like someone who was finally building something of her own. The elevator descended. The doors opened. I walked out into the cool night air and started the walk home. My phone buzzed one more time. A text from an unknown number. I opened it, and my heart stopped for just a second. Su-Ching. This is Weiwei. I just wanted to say I'm sorry.
Not because you caught me.
Because I was wrong. And I don't know how to fix it. But I'm sorry. I read the message 3 times. Then I typed back. I know. Good luck out there. I put the phone in my pocket and kept walking. The streetlights flickered overhead. The city hummed with its usual nighttime energy. And I thought about Zhou Yu, about the tool he was building, about the possibility of creating something that could actually help people. I thought about how far I had come in just 2 days. And I smiled because for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. 3 days later, I walked into Zhou Yu's office and felt like I had stepped into a different world. The space was open and bright, all glass walls and white desks with plants everywhere. Not the sad little office plants that looked like they were barely surviving. These were big, healthy monstera and ferns that spilled out of ceramic pots and made the whole place feel alive. There were whiteboards covered in diagrams and sticky notes, and a team of people working quietly at their stations, typing and clicking and occasionally laughing about something. Zhou Yu was waiting for me at the front. He was wearing a gray sweater today, no jacket, and he looked like he had been there for hours already. You're early, he said, glancing at his watch. So are you. He smiled. Come on. I'll show you around. He gave me the tour. The development team, a group of 4 people who looked at me with curious, friendly eyes. The design team, 2 women who were working on the user interface and had a dozen mock-ups spread across their desks. The testing area, where someone was running simulations on a massive monitor that made my heart beat a little faster just looking at it. This is impressive, I said. You built all of this. I built the foundation, he said. But I need you to build the story. Come on, let's go to my office. His office was at the back, a glass box with a door that closed and muffled the noise of the open floor. There was a large desk, 2 chairs, and another whiteboard covered in notes. On the desk, there were 2 cups of coffee waiting, 1 hot Americano, he said, sliding one toward me, and 1 flat white for me. I took a guess. I took the cup. The warmth seeped into my palms. You guessed right. I sat down and pulled out my laptop. I had spent the last 3 days refining my notes, turning them into a proper proposal. I had outlined features, flagged potential issues, and written a draft of what the user experience could look like. I have a lot to show you, I said. Good. That's exactly what I was hoping for. I opened my laptop and started talking. I walked him through every feature, every use case, every scenario I could imagine. I told him about the times I had wished for a tool like this, the moments when I had been overlooked or dismissed and had no way to prove my own worth. This is what women need, I said. Not just a tracker, a tool that helps them build a case for themselves, something that turns their daily work into documented evidence of their value. Zhou Yu listened without interrupting. When I finished, he was quiet for a long moment. You've been thinking about this for a while, he said. Longer than 3 days, I admit it. I just didn't know it until you asked. He leaned back in his chair and studied me. Okay, let's build it. Just like that, just like that. He stood up and walked to the whiteboard. He picked up a marker and started writing. Here's what I'm thinking. We take your user stories and map them to the technical framework I already have. We build a prototype in 4 weeks, test it with real users, and iterate from there. I stood up and joined him at the whiteboard. I grabbed another marker and started writing alongside him. filling in gaps, adding details, building something together. We worked for hours. The sun shifted across the sky, casting long shadows through the glass walls. Someone brought us lunch at some point, sandwiches and salads that we ate without really noticing. The team outside came and went, glancing in at us with knowing smiles. At some point, I stepped back and looked at the whiteboard. It was covered in diagrams and notes, a blueprint for something real. "This is actually happening," I said. "It is." Joey was standing next to me, his shoulder almost touching mine. "Are you ready?" "I don't know," I said honestly. "But I want to do it anyway." He smiled. "That's the right answer." The next few weeks were a blur of long hours and late nights. I quit my job at the old company, something I had been thinking about for a long time. Director Zhang tried to talk me out of it. He offered me a promotion, a raise, a corner office with a better view. But I told him no. "I have something I need to build," I said. He looked at me for a long moment. Then he said, "I understand. And Su Qing, I'm sorry about what happened with Weiwei. I should have handled it differently." "It's okay," I said. "It's over now." I walked out of the building for the last time and felt a weight lift off my shoulders. The sun was bright and warm, and I stood on the sidewalk for a minute, just breathing. Then I walked to Zhou's office and started my new life. Her algorithm project consumed me. I worked with the development team on feature design, translating user needs into technical requirements. I worked with the design team on the interface, making sure it was intuitive and accessible. I tested prototypes and gave feedback and pushed for changes when something didn't feel right. And slowly, piece by piece, we built something beautiful. The launch date was set for a Tuesday. We had a small event planned, just a few dozen people from the tech community and some journalists. Zhou had arranged everything. All I had to do was show up and talk about what we had built the night before the launch. I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, running through my speech in my head. I had practiced it a dozen times, but I still felt like I was going to forget everything the moment I stepped on stage. At midnight, my phone buzzed. "Zhou, you awake?" "Yes." "Me too."
Can't sleep, no.
"Nervous?" "Same." A pause. "Want to talk?" I smiled at the screen.
Sure. He called me.
His voice was low and warm, the sound of someone who had been working too hard and was running on caffeine and adrenaline. "You're going to be great tomorrow," he said. "I've seen you explain things. You have a gift. I've never done anything like this before." "Neither have I. But that doesn't mean we can't do it." We talked for an hour. About the project, about our fears, about the women we wanted to reach. He told me about the moment he had first thought of her algorithm, a conversation with his sister who had been passed over for a promotion despite having the best performance metrics in her department. "That's when I realized," he said, "it's not enough to be good. You have to be able to prove it. And most women don't have the tools to do that." "That's why we're building this," I said. "That's why we're building this." We hung up at 1 a.m. I fell asleep almost immediately, the anxiety replaced by something steadier. Certainty, maybe. Or just the knowledge that I wasn't doing this alone. The next morning, I woke up early and got ready. I wore a blue dress, the one I had bought for the occasion, simple and professional. I did my makeup carefully, applied my lipstick, and looked at myself in the mirror. I looked like someone who was about to change her life. The event was held in a co-working space downtown, all exposed brick and industrial lighting. The room was filling up when I arrived, people in tech and media and a few faces I recognized from the industry. Zhou was at the front, talking to someone with a camera. He saw me and walked over. "Ready?" he asked. "As I'll ever be." He put a hand on my shoulder, brief and warm. "You're going to be great. I'll be right there." I stepped onto the stage. The lights were bright, too bright, and I couldn't see individual faces. Just a blur of heads and the hum of conversation. I took a breath. I started talking. I told them about the tool. I explained how it worked, what it did, why it mattered. I shared stories from my own experience, the moments when I had been overlooked and undervalued. I talked about Weiwei and the conference room, about standing outside while my own work was being praised by someone else. "I built this tool for the women who have been locked out of rooms," I said. "For the women who have had their ideas stolen, their contributions dismissed, their value questioned. This is for you." So you can prove what you're worth. The applause was thunderous. I stood on the stage, blinking in the bright lights, feeling something shift in my chest. Joey was at the front, clapping, his face split in a wide smile. I stepped down and he was there, pulling me into a quick hug. You did it, he said. You really did it. We did it. I corrected. His smile widened.
Yeah.
We did. The launch was a success. The media coverage was positive, the user signups were strong, and the feedback was overwhelming. Women reached out to share their own stories, to say thank you for giving them a tool to advocate for themselves. That night, after the event was over and the room had emptied, Zhou Yu and I sat in the quiet co-working space, the last two people left. The lights were dimmed. The city glowed through the windows. I have something to tell you, he said. I turned to look at him. What? He was quiet for a moment. Then he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. My heart stopped. Don't worry, he said quickly. It's not that. Not yet. It's just a token. A symbol. For everything we've been through. He opened the box. Inside was a small silver charm, a tiny key, delicate and gleaming. The first day we met, he said, you told me about being locked out of that conference room. I want you to know, you'll never be locked out of anything again. Not with me. I took the charm from the box. It was cool and heavy in my palm. You're ridiculous, I said, but my voice was thick. Probably. He smiled. But you're stuck with me now. I looked at the key in my hand. Then I looked at him, at the man who had seen me at my worst, and decided to build something with me anyway. Thank you, I said. For everything. Thank me by sticking around, he said. We have a lot more building to do. I put the charm in my pocket, close to my heart, and I smiled. Deal. A year later, I stood in front of a crowd of 500 women and told them the story of how I got locked out of a conference room and built an empire instead. The auditorium was packed. Every seat was filled, and there were people standing along the walls, craning their necks to see the stage. The lights were warm and golden, nothing like the harsh fluorescence of my old office. I wore a tailored blazer and my grandmother's pearl earrings, the ones I saved for days when I needed to feel invincible. I didn't plan any of this, I said into the microphone. I was just trying to get back what was mine. Laughter rippled through the crowd. They knew the story. They had read the blog posts, watched the videos, followed the journey from a stolen PowerPoint to a multi-million-dollar platform. Her algorithm had become more than a tool. It had become a movement. I told them about the early days, the all-nighters, the moments when I was convinced we were going to fail. I told them about the women who had tested the beta version and sent US pages of feedback, some of it brutal, all of it valuable. I told them about the first time a user wrote to say the platform had helped her negotiate a raise and she had gotten it. That's why we do this, I said. Not for the awards or the recognition. For the emails that say thank you. For the messages that say I finally feel seen. The applause was thunderous. I stood there, blinking against the bright lights, and felt tears pricking at the corners of my eyes. Zhou Yu was in the front row. He was wearing a suit today, which he only did for special occasions. He was smiling, that warm, steady smile that had gotten me through more rough nights than I could count. Next to him was my mother, who had flown in for the event and was crying openly into a handkerchief. After the talk, there was a reception. Wine and cheese and little plates of appetizers, the kind of event I had always felt awkward at. But tonight felt different. Tonight, I belonged here. People came up to me in waves. Women who had used the platform, women who wanted to invest, women who just wanted to shake my hand and say thank you. I smiled and nodded and hugged and posed for photos until my cheeks ached. At the end of the night, when the crowd had thinned and the caterers were packing up, Zhou Yu found me by the window. I was looking out at the city lights, the same city that had felt so overwhelming a year ago. Tired, he asked, exhausted. I leaned into him without thinking. His arm came around my shoulder, steady and familiar. You were amazing tonight, he said. I mean it. I've seen you speak 100 times. But tonight was different. Different how? I don't know. You seemed freer. Like you finally believed you belonged up there.
I thought about that.
He was right. For the first time, I hadn't felt like I was performing. I had felt like I was sharing something real. Maybe I do, I said. Belong, I mean, maybe you always did. He pressed a kiss to my temple. You just had to remind yourself. We stood there for a long moment, watching the lights flicker and glow. The city hummed below us, full of people going about their lives. Some of them were women who were using our platform right now, building their own cases, fighting their own battles. The wedding was small, which was exactly what we wanted. We held it in a garden on the outskirts of the city, a place full of roses and climbing vines and a little stone fountain that burbled in the background. The guest list was 30 people, just family and close friends. My mother cried through the entire ceremony. Zhou Yu's sister, the one who had inspired the whole project, stood as his best person. I wore a simple white dress, nothing too fancy, and a veil that my grandmother had worn at her own wedding. Zhou Yu wore a gray suit, and those glasses I had fallen in love with. When I walked down the aisle, the afternoon sun filtered through the leaves and dappled everything in gold. He looked at me like I was the only person in the world. You're beautiful, he said when I reached him. His voice cracked just a little. Don't cry yet, I whispered. We haven't even done the vows. I'm not crying. I'm just. He blinked rapidly. I'm just happy. The officiant smiled at us. We had written our own vows, something I had been nervous about. But when the moment came, the words came easily. I promise to open every door for you, Zhou Yu said, and to never let you stand outside alone. I promise to build with you, fight with you, and celebrate with you. I promise to always bring you coffee, hot, with a little oat milk, because I know you like it that way. Laughter rippled through the small crowd. I took a breath. I promise to never let anyone steal your work, I said. I promise to be your partner in every sense of the word. I promise to remind you that you're brilliant, even when you forget. And I promise to always answer your messages, even at 3 a.m. He laughed. I'm holding you to that. You should. We exchanged rings. Simple bands, silver, nothing flashy. When he slid the ring onto my finger, his hands were shaking. Are you nervous? I whispered. Terrified, he whispered back. But in a good way. The kiss was soft and quick, mostly because my mother was sobbing loudly in the front row, and I was trying not to laugh. Dinner was in a tent draped with fairy lights. We ate and drank and danced until our feet hurt. Zhou Yu spun me around the dance floor, like we were the only 2 people in the world. His hands were warm on my waist. His smile was like sunrise. Can I tell you something? He said, leaning close so I could hear him over the music. Anything. I knew it was you from the first message, he said. The Pikachu video. I knew. There was something about the way you explained it, the way you made it seem so simple and so brilliant at the same time. I just knew. I laughed. That's a very romantic confession. I'm a very romantic person. You just have to look past the spreadsheets. I kissed him again, longer this time, and the music swelled around us. After the wedding, we went to the beach for our honeymoon. Just a week, nothing too extravagant. We walked on the sand and ate seafood and talked about everything and nothing. We talked about the future of her algorithm, the new features we wanted to build, the women we wanted to reach. We talked about travel and books and the kind of life we wanted to build together. One night, we were sitting on the balcony of our hotel room, watching the sun set over the ocean. The sky was pink and orange, the kind of sunset that looked like a painting. Can I tell you something? I said, always. I took a breath. I think I want to write a book about everything that happened, about the conference room and the videos and building the platform. I want other women to know that they can do it too. He turned to look at me, his eyes warm. I think that's a brilliant idea. Really, really. You have a story worth telling. And you tell it so well. I leaned my head on his shoulder. What would I do without you? Probably be very successful and not need me at all, he said. But I'm glad you have me anyway. I laughed and punched him softly in the arm. You're impossible. And yet you married me. Yet I married you. We sat there until the sun disappeared and the stars came out one by one, scattered across the dark sky like tiny promises. 6 months later, the book came out. It wasn't a huge bestseller, not the kind you saw on airport shelves, but it reached the people it needed to reach. I got emails from women who had read it and decided to quit their toxic jobs, women who had used the strategies to advocate for themselves, women who had started their own companies and felt like they weren't alone. One email in particular stuck with me. It came from a woman in a city I had never visited, a woman who worked in finance and had been passed over for promotion 3 times. "I read your book in one night," she wrote. "And the next morning, I walked into my boss's office and demanded a meeting. I showed him everything I had done, all the contributions I had made, all the times I had been overlooked. And you know what? He listened. He actually listened. I got the promotion. Thank you for showing me it was possible." I read the email 3 times. Then I forwarded it to Zhou. "Look," I wrote. "This is why we do this." He replied, "I know. And I'm so proud of you." I put my phone down and looked around my office. It was small, but it was mine. There was a plant in the corner that I had somehow kept alive for a whole year. There was a framed photo of Zhou and me on our wedding day, both of us laughing at something. There was the little silver key charm he had given me, hanging from a hook on my bulletin board. I had come so far from that day in the conference room. I had been locked out, humiliated, dismissed. But I had fought back.
I had built something.
I had found someone who believed in me, and I had believed in myself. That the door to my office was open. I smiled at that. Outside, I could hear the sounds of her algorithm team working. Laughter and typing, and the low murmur of conversation. We had grown from a small group in Zhou's office to a full company with dozens of employees. We had users in 30 countries. We had built something real. And I had built a life. That night, Zhou and I sat on our couch, the one we had picked out together, the one that was too big for our apartment but we had bought anyway because we liked the color. He was reading a book. I was scrolling through my phone, looking at the latest user feedback. "I love you," I said, completely out of nowhere. He looked up, surprised. "I love you too." What brought that on? Nothing. Just thinking. He put his book down and pulled me close. "Good thoughts, good thoughts." I rested my head on his chest. "Really, really good thoughts." He pressed a kiss to my hair. "Good. That's how it should be." I closed my eyes and listened to his heartbeat. Steady and strong, like everything he was. We had come so far. We had built an empire from a PowerPoint. We had turned a betrayal into a mission. We had found each other in the middle of chaos and decided to hold on, and I knew, with absolute certainty, that I would never be locked out again. And not of a room. Not of a life. Not of anything, because I had opened the door myself. Thank you so much for reading Su Qing and Zhou's story. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe and follow for more stories about women who rise, fight back, and build the lives they deserve. Your support means the world to me. See you in the next one.